A cold rain fell over the city that evening, the kind of rain that makes people hurry with their heads down, umbrellas fighting the wind. Inside a small diner on the corner of 5th and Main, the lights were warm, the coffee was hot, and nobody in that room had any idea they were about to witness something they would remember for the rest of their lives. Because sometimes the smallest moment, one sentence, one choice, can change everything. Before we dive into today's story, if you believe in the power of kindness, hit that subscribe button and tap the like icon so more people can find stories like this one. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. This channel, Kindness Hub, is built for people like you, people who still believe that a little compassion can change the world. Now, let's begin. Her name was Maria. She was 26 years old, working the evening shift at a small family-owned diner just outside of Chicago. She had been on her feet since noon, carrying plates, refilling coffee, smiling through the ache in her lower back. She was putting herself through night classes at the community college, studying to become a nurse, and every tip she earned went straight into a jar labeled tuition that she kept hidden under her bed. That night, the diner was quiet except for the soft hum of the old jukebox in the corner, playing something slow and forgotten. Then the door opened, and a black car pulled up outside, its headlights cutting through the rain. A man walked in wearing a coat that probably cost more than Maria made in a year. He was tall, composed, and clearly used to being noticed. Behind him walked two assistants, both glued to their phones, both careful not to make eye contact with anyone. His name, though nobody in the diner knew it yet, was Richard Halden, a billionaire investor known across the country for his sharp business deals and even sharper tongue. He sat down at the corner booth, barely glancing at the menu, and when Maria approached with a notepad and her warm, tired smile, he looked her up and down. Then, in a language Maria did not understand, he said something to his assistant, smirking as he spoke. His assistant chuckled quietly, glancing at Maria with a look that made her stomach twist. She didn't need to understand the words to feel their weight. Something about the way he said it, the tone, the smile, told her enough. He was mocking her. Perhaps her uniform, perhaps the small stain on her apron from a spilled coffee earlier that shift, perhaps simply the fact that she was standing there serving him. Maria stood still for a moment. The other two customers at the counter, an elderly man named Walter and a young mother with her sleeping toddler, both noticed the exchange. The room grew quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hold your breath. Maria could have walked away. She could have gone to the back and let another server take his table. She could have said nothing at all. But instead, she took a small breath, looked Richard directly in the eyes, and spoke with a steady, gentle voice. "I don't know what you just said," she told him, "but I hope, whatever kind of day you've had, that this meal brings you a little peace. Because everyone deserves kindness, even when they forget to give it." The diner fell completely silent. Richard's smirk faded. His assistants looked up from their phones for the first time since walking in. Nobody expected those words. Not from a tired waitress on a rainy Tuesday night. Not directed at a man like him. For a long moment, Richard said nothing. He simply looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. Then something shifted in his expression, something quiet and human beneath all that polish and power. He asked her, in English this time, to sit down for a moment. Maria hesitated, glancing toward the kitchen, but her manager nodded, so she slid into the booth across from him. Richard admitted, quietly, that the words he'd spoken were not kind ones. He had been having a difficult week, a business deal falling apart, a strained relationship with his own daughter, and somewhere along the way, he had let his frustration spill onto a stranger who didn't deserve it. He asked why she responded the way she did instead of simply walking away or reporting him. Maria smiled softly and said that her grandmother used to tell her that you never know what battle someone else is fighting, and that kindness costs nothing but can sometimes save everything. She said she chose kindness not because he had earned it, but because she believed everyone, even strangers, even people having a worse day, deserved a little grace. Richard sat there for a long moment, humbled in a way that money had never allowed him to feel. Before he left that night, he left something folded quietly under his plate, not as a display, but privately, respectfully. It wasn't just a generous tip. It was a note, along with enough to cover the rest of her tuition for the semester. The note simply read, "Thank you for reminding me who I want to be." Maria didn't find out who he truly was until weeks later, when a local news story mentioned a quiet donation made to the community college's nursing program, funding scholarships for working students just like her. She realized then that one small act of grace, spoken without expecting anything in return, had rippled outward further than she ever imagined. Word of that night eventually spread, not because Maria told anyone, but because Walter, the elderly man at the counter, couldn't stop talking about what he'd witnessed. People began saying that in a world that often rewards coldness and cutting remarks, one waitress had chosen warmth instead, and it had touched a man who had almost forgotten what warmth felt like. That's the quiet power of kindness. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need recognition. It simply needs one person willing to choose gentleness in a moment where it would have been easier not to. So the next time you feel disrespected, dismissed, or unseen, remember Maria. You never know whose heart you might soften, whose day you might change, or whose life you might quietly, gently turn around. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs a little reminder today. And remember, kindness is never wasted. It always finds its way back.